بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين على أمور الدنيا والدين وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Inshallah, we continue our kitab سفينة الصلاة in the madhab of Al-Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah. Last week we continued in the conditions of Salah. The conditions of Salah, which were how many in total? Anas, you were here for that lesson. How many conditions of Salah in total? Hadujit? 12 conditions in total. The first one being that a person needs to be free from any impurities on their thawb, their clothes, their body, and the place they're praying. That's the first one. Second, that a person needs to be free from minor and major impurities. So they need to have wudu and ghusl. The third is that a person needs to pray when the time of Salah has entered. When the time of Salah has entered. And we mentioned what the times of Salah were and when do they begin and end. Number 4 was to cover the awrah. And we mentioned what is the awrah for a man and woman and where do they differ. And other things related to what they need to cover as well. Number 5 was to face the qibla, and we mentioned what parts of your body needs to face the qibla at different positions. Number 6 is the person praying has to be what? Muslim. The person praying has to be Muslim. And number 7 was that the person has to have aql. They need to be sane and of the correct age. So that is where we stopped, correct? Okay, we're going to continue from then. Our aim is, we don't have a lesson, Aqeedah lesson after this. So our aim is to have a little bit of a longer lesson, but get more done. So we're going to, inshaAllah, finish the conditions and begin on the arkan. So the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned الثامن, the eighth condition out of the 12 conditions. أن تكون المرأة نقية من الحيض والنفاس فالحائض والنفساء لا تصح صلاتهما ولا قضاء عليهما فإن دخل الوقت وهي طاهرة فطرأ عليها الحيض والنفاس بعد أن مضى ما يسع واجبات تلك الصلاة وجب عليها قضاؤها وإذا انقطع الحيض والنفاس ولم يعد فإن كان في وقت الصبح أو الظهر أو المغرب ولو بقي منه قدر ما يسع الله أكبر وجب قضاء ذلك الفرض وإن كان في وقت العصر أو العشاء ولو بقي منه قدر ما يسع الله أكبر وجب قضاء ذلك الفرض والذي قبله وهو الظهر أو المغرب. So what we're going to do for this condition is we're going to explain the condition first, then translate. So we're going to explain what the condition means and then translate. So this condition is that a woman needs to be free from menstruation and postnatal bleeding. Menstruation and postnatal bleeding. That is the title of the condition. Now, the woman, then the Shaykh, he goes into mentioning. So we understand that for a woman to pray, she needs to not be on her period or not have postnatal bleeding. We understand that. Then he goes into mentioning when does and what salah does a woman have to make up. In which situations does she have to make up a salah? Okay, so imagine there's two situations. One situation where a woman's blood stops, her period stops, or her postnatal bleeding stops. And where it starts within the time of a salah. So we're going to take the example throughout of, for example, it's now the time of what? Someone can still pray what salah? Asr salah. Let's take that example, yeah? So it's the time of Asr, okay? So let's say Asr, it started at 4 something, 4:37. Let's just say Asr starts at 5 o'clock to keep it simple. So let's say Asr started at 5 o'clock. Past 5 o'clock, there's two situations like we mentioned. that either a woman was on her period and it stopped within the time of Asr, or she was not on her period and it started at the time of Asr. We're going to explain those two situations. The first situation is when she was pure at the beginning of the time of Asr. So at 5 o'clock she was pure, and then sometime throughout Asr her period started, or her postnatal bleeding started. So what situation are we taking? When the period starts. Understand? Okay? When that happens, the period starting splits into two. It splits into the first situation which is that the woman, it happened right at the start of Asr. For example, it happened at 5:01. 5:01. So 1 minute after Asr entered. And the second situation is that it happened maybe post 10 minutes. So 5:11. 5:11. Why is that important? What is the difference between them two? The first situation, she wouldn't have had time to pray the Salah, the wajibat of that Salah. She wouldn't have had time to pray Asr anyway. And the second situation is that she would have had time to pray Asr. So we split, it starts two situations, that her period starts and her period ends within a time of a Salah. When her period starts, we go on to this side, that splits into two. Either she had time to pray the wajibat, or she didn't have time to pray the wajibat of that Salah. The 4 rakat of, that includes obviously her going to make wudu if she didn't have wudu, and standing for Salah, covering her awrah, facing the qibla, and praying the 4 rakats. Let's say that takes around 10 minutes. If that period of time passes, 10 minutes, there's a hukum, there's a ruling. And if there wasn't enough time, there's another ruling. If that period of time does pass, that she passed is that 10 minutes, and she had time to pray, but she didn't pray, because it was allowed for her to pray until when Asr ends. It was allowed to her for her to pray. But say it was past that 10 minutes. So that situation where she had enough time to pray that wajib. What is upon her? To repeat that Salah after her period is finished. So she has to repeat her Salah after her period is finished. That Asr, she has to repeat it. If she didn't have time, which is the other situation, that she didn't have time to pray, so it happened as soon as the Asr time came in. Sah? If she didn't have time, then what is upon her? Nothing. She doesn't need to make up that Salah, because she didn't have time to pray anyway in the first place. Does that make sense? That is the situation of her period starting. And you might think, I'm talking to a bunch of men. Why am I talking about this? It's important because later you will have daughters and you have sisters and your mothers and you have women in your lives that you need to explain this to. So that's important. A lot of rulings come from this, because there's certain things that are allowed and not allowed, like we studied before in previous books, when a woman is on her period. So, and it's very important to know what salah she needs to make up. Okay, so that is the period of that is the situation where her period starts. Now imagine that her period is ending. So she's been on her period or postnatal bleeding and is coming to an end in the time of Asr. Okay? Forget the time of Asr for now. We're going to come to that. That her period is ending within a time of a Salah. Her period is ending within a time of Salah. Now that splits into two as well. Her period is ending, that splits into two. So we've done the 2 for when it starts, now we're going to do the 2 for when it ends. Is that clear? Is everyone following, yeah? So the first situation is that the Salah is, that the when it ends is in the time of either Fajr or Dhuhr or Maghrib. Fajr or Dhuhr or Maghrib. Fajr or Dhuhr or Maghrib. That is the first situation. And obviously the second situation would be it ends in the time of what's left, the 2 salahs that are left. Asr and Isha. Asr and Isha. That is the second situation. Who can tell me the difference between why I split it into these two categories? Fajr and Dhuhr and Maghrib. And the Salah that is Asr and Isha. Why those two categories? What is the difference between them? Anyone? Any guesses?
Because Fajr and Maghrib are the ones where the sun is rising and setting. Dhuhr is when the sun is it's not the sun. I don't know.
Good guess, good guess. Not quite. I'll give you a clue. When somebody is traveling, does that ring any bells? What are they allowed to do? They're allowed to shorten. They're also allowed to combine. Dhuhr and Fajr and Dhuhr and Maghrib. Sorry. Hold on. 1 second. Asr and Isha are in its own group, right? Those are the ones that you can combine with the prayer before it. Is that clear? Yeah? So those two you can combine with the prayer before it. Can you combine Fajr with the prayer before it? Can you combine Dhuhr with the prayer before it? Can you combine Maghrib with the prayer before it? No. So those are in one group. The ones you can combine with a prayer before and the ones you can't combine with a prayer before. Okay. So what are we talking about? Where are we? We're in when her period starts or ends? Ends, okay? And we're going to take the first group where it's either Fajr or Dhuhr or Maghrib. So the ones that you can't combine with the prayer before it. As long as there is left of that salah, the time of that salah, the time that it will take her to say Allahu Akbar, then she has to make up that salah. So it's not the same as before. What was needed before? For her to be able to pray the whole salah, right? What's needed now is only for her to be able to say Allahu Akbar. So for Dhuhr, for Fajr and Dhuhr and Maghrib, she has to only make up that salah. For example, let's say Asr ends at 8:23. Have we done Asr? We haven't done Asr. We'll do the example after. Okay. Then the second situation is that again, if in the Salah that is either what's left, Asr or Isha, there is the time left to say Allahu Akbar. She has to make up that Salah and the one before it. So, if it is the end time of Asr, right at the end, like we are now, right? Just before Maghrib, at 8:20, say Maghrib comes in at 8:23. At 8:22, her period stops. But she didn't have time to pray Maghrib. What does she have to make up? She didn't have time to pray Asr, sorry. She has to make up Asr and the Salah before it. Because she missed Asr and the Salah before it. And what was left from the time of Salah for Asr? Even 1 minute. Even 10 seconds to say Allahu Akbar. Yes. In the order of the Salah. So, Dhuhr and then? That's a good question. We'll come back to that. Write it down, the question. But generally, you pray in the order of the Salah and then, unless there's a need. Unless there is a need. Like the Salah, if you were to pray in the order of the Salah, the time of the Salah would go. The time of the Salah you're on would go. Okay. Does that make sense?
Repeat the first one.
So if it is Fajr or Dhuhr or Maghrib, which is the Salahs that you don't combine with the one before, then what is upon the woman is that she only makes up that Salah by itself. That is the difference between this and the next one. But if it's Asr or Isha, she makes up that Salah and the one before it.
Both of them, she has time to say Allahu Akbar. She has to do both.
Yeah, both of them is just until she has the time to say Allahu Akbar. That is, we explained it so you can understand the mas'ala, the principles that we're about to explain, rather than just reading it and trying to get you to understand. So now you understand there's two situations. One that a woman, her period is starting, one that is stopping. If it's starting and she has it started and she had the time to pray that salah, she needs to make up that salah only. But if it's stopping, then you look, what salah did it stop at? What salah did it stop at? If it is Fajr or Dhuhr or Maghrib, then she needs to make up that salah only, as long as she had time to say Allahu Akbar. If it was Asr or Isha, then she makes up that salah and the one before it. Is that clear? Makes sense, yeah? Okay, now let's read. So it says, وَالثَّامِنُ سبحان الله أن تكون المرأة نقية من الحيض والنفاس. That the eighth condition is that the woman needs to be free from حيض والنفاس, which is menstruation and postnatal bleeding. والحائض والنفساء, so the woman that is on her حيض and the woman that is on postnatal bleeding, لا تصح صلاتهما. The prayer of both of them isn't correct. ولا قضاء عليهما, and there is no repeating, there's no making up the salah for both of them. فإن دخل الوقت, so that is generally, there's no, for the salah they missed whilst they were on their period, they don't need to make that up for every single day they missed. Then he explains, when do they make it up? فإن دخل الوقت, if the time of the salah comes in, وهي طاهرة, and she is pure, فطرأ عليها الحيض والنفاس بعد أن مضى ما يسع واجبات تلك الصلاة وجب عليها قضاؤها. If the time enters and she is pure, and then her hayd or nifas starts, after there was enough time for her to complete the wajibat of that salah, meaning to make wudu and pray and to make wudu and cover her awrah and face, then وجب عليها قضاؤها, then what is wajib upon her is to make that salah up. That is for when her hayd starts. So she was pure, then she became impure. Is that clear? وإذا انقطع الحيض والنفاس ولم يعد, and if the hayd and the nifas stop, the bleeding stops, ولم يعد, and it doesn't come back. It doesn't come back. Not stops and starts again. That doesn't count. But if it doesn't come back, فإن كان, then he splits it. So this is when the second situation that we described, when the hayd stops. فإن كان في وقت الصبح والظهر والمغرب لو بقي منه قدر ما يسع الله أكبر وجب قضاء ذلك الفرض. فإن كان في وقت الصبح والظهر والمغرب, then if it is in the time of Fajr or the morning prayer or Dhuhr or Maghrib, like we discussed, ولو بقي منه, even if what remains from it is قدر ما يسع الله أكبر, the amount where she can say Allahu Akbar, وجب قضاء ذلك الفرض, then what is wajib is to make up that fard salah, meaning Fajr or Dhuhr or Maghrib. وإن كان في وقت العصر أو العشاء, and if it's the time of Asr or Isha, ولو بقي منه قدر ما يسع الله أكبر, and what remains is even if what remains is from the salah is the amount where she can say Allahu Akbar, وجب قضاء ذلك الفرض, then it is wajib for her to make up that fard. والذي قبله, and the one before it, and the salah before it, وهو الظهر أو المغرب, and it is, what is that salah before it? It's either dhuhr when you're praying Asr or Maghrib when you're praying Isha. Clear? Okay. التاسع أن يعتقد أن الصلاة المفروضة التي يصليها فرض فمن اعتقدها سنة أو خلا قلبه عن العقيدتين أو تشكك في الفرضية لم تصح صلاته. Okay. So the ninth condition from the conditions of Salah, to know that the salah you're praying is fard. To know that the salah you're praying is fard. To know that it is wajib upon you and it's from the pillars of Islam. And the person that leaves it off is not excused. Except in certain situations, for example, the one that the salah is not wajib on, like the child. And whoever believes that the salah they're praying is sunnah, is obligatory. Whoever believes it is sunnah. So he says, فَمَنْ اعْتَقَدَهَا, whoever believes it is sunnah, sunnatan, أو خلا قلبه عن العاقدتين, or his heart is free from both beliefs, meaning the belief that is fard and the belief that is sunnah. So he doesn't believe it's any of those. أو تشكك في فرضيته أو في الفردية, or he has doubt whether it's fard or not, whether it's obligatory or not. لا لم تصح صلاته, then his salah is incorrect, is not counted, it's not correct. Why? Because he's missing a condition. He has to know what? That the salah he's praying is fard. Pretty simple, yeah, that condition. Hey, next. So number 10 now. العاشر ألا يعتقد ركنا من أركانها سنة فمن اعتقدها فروضا أو خلا قلبه عن العاقدتين أو تشكك في الفرضية أو اعتقد سنة من سنن الصلاة فرضا صحت صلاته. Meaning that the 10th from the pillars of Salah, to not believe that a pillar from the pillars of Salah, which we're going to study what the pillars of Salah are, but we take for example the Fatiha and the sujood and the ruku', these are all pillars of Salah, yeah? To not believe that is sunnah. You can't say that if someone leaves out the Fatiha or if someone leaves out the sujood, it's okay because that is actually just sunnah. The person can't believe that. If they believe that, the salah is incorrect. However, when does the salah become correct? This one and the last one is quite different. We said for the last one that we need to know that it's fard. We need to know that it's fard. But this one we're just saying that we need to know that the pillars are not sunnah. So what does he mention after that? فَمَنِ اعْتَقَدَهَا فُرُوضًا, whoever believes that it is obligatory, then they're good. أَوْ خَلَى قَلْبُهُ عَنِ الْعَاقِدَتَيْنِ, or his heart is free from the two beliefs. He doesn't believe that is fard, and he also doesn't believe that is sunnah. أو تشكك في الفرضية, or he has doubt whether it's fard. أو اعتقد سنة من سنن الصلاة فرضا, or he believes in his heart that one of the sunan of the salah are fard, are obligatory. For example, he believes that, I don't know, reading the surah after Fatiha, if I leave that out, my salah is incorrect. He believes that. What does he say for all of these two people? صحت صلاته, his salah is correct. Different to the other pillar, the other condition we just mentioned. The other condition is that we need to know that the salah itself is fard. We need to know that. We can't think it's sunnah. We can't have any doubt in it. We can't have our heart free from any of the beliefs. Sah? But what is this condition is that he needs to know that the pillars are not sunnah. He needs to know that the pillars are not sunnah. But if he believes that the sunnah are pillars, is that okay? He believes the sunnah from the salah is a pillar. Is that okay? We said that he needs to believe that the things that are pillars, like the sujood and the ruku', are fard and not sunnah. We need to know. Go back. He needs to believe that the pillars themselves are not sunnah. We never said that. See the difference between that? If I say he needs to believe that the pillars are fard, what is the difference between me saying that and saying he needs to believe that the pillars are not sunnah? What's the difference between those two statements?
He holds a different belief is fine.
If he has doubt or he he doesn't believe it's fard, but he doesn't believe it's sunnah. Is that okay?
Sure. I'm not sure.
The person believes that, for example, let's take the Fatiha, which we know is a pillar. Okay, a pillar of Salah. Without the Fatiha, the Salah is incorrect. But he believes, okay, I'll give you two situations. One person says, the Fatiha is sunnah, if I leave it off, it's okay. Is Salah correct? No. Okay. What if the person says, I don't believe it's fard, but I don't believe it's sunnah either. I just don't have any belief in my heart on the matter. Salah correct? Salah is correct. Because what is this condition preventing? The condition is preventing you bringing something that is at the level of a pillar down to sunnah. Down a level. But it doesn't matter if you go up or if you're staying the same level. If you don't know, it doesn't matter. What is preventing is bringing the pillar to sunnah level. Even though sunnah is a very high level and we should all strive to follow the sunnah. But we're talking about whether the salah is correct or not. Does that make sense? So, to repeat, he says, to not believe in that a pillar from the pillars of salah is a sunnah. But if he believes it is fard, or he believes, if he believes it's obligatory, or he doesn't have any belief in his heart, or he believes, or he has doubt whether it's fard, or he believes that a sunnah is wajib, or a sunnah is a pillar, then his salah is correct in that situation. Does that make sense? Okay. The next two pillars are very, very simple. The next two conditions are very, very simple. He says, Al-Hadi Ashara, the 11th condition of Salah. اجتناب مبطلات الصلاة الآتية في جميع صلاته. To stay away from the breakers of Salah that are going to come. في جميع صلاته, in his whole prayer. In his whole prayer, to stay away from the breakers of Salah. And we're going to come to what the breakers of Salah is later on in the book, which is our third section. After studying the conditions and the pillars, we will study what breaks the Salah. So the 11th condition is that someone stays away from the things that break their Salah in the whole Salah. And the last one, الثاني عشرة, the 12th condition. The 12th condition. Now, is معرفة كيفيتها, is to know كيفيتها. If we were to translate directly, it means its howness. Meaning, what does that actually mean? The positions of Salah, the order of Salah, to know this, to know that sujood comes after a ruku', sah? And to know that standing up from ruku' comes after the ruku', and so on. And anything like it. So knowing how to pray the Salah, basically. How to pray the Salah. بأن يعرف أعمالها وترتيبها كما يأتي. To know its actions, and that is through knowing its actions and its order, like will come when we're studying the pillars of Salah. Now we have concluded with that the 12th conditions. So we've done all 12 conditions of Salah. A person needs to come with every single one of these 12 for the Salah to be correct. For the Salah to be correct. If one of these 12 are missing, the Salah is incorrect. So for example, if somebody starts their Salah whilst facing the Qibla and their awrah is covered and there's got no najasa on their clothes or body or the place they're praying or any of the 12 conditions, they've fulfilled all of it, the Salah is correct as long as the conditions are continued throughout the Salah. However, if someone breaks their wudu, they've missed out on a condition from the conditions of Salah, even with it in the Salah. Does that mean what happened before that counts? So for example, they're praying Dhuhr, they got to the third rak'ah, and they said, they broke their wudu, they went to go make their wudu, and they said they will continue from the third rak'ah, and that's it. They don't have to stand up to make up any other rak'at. They have to start again because the condition's gone. The condition has to continue throughout the whole salah. Condition has to start, and they don't have to start again. They need to make up what they missed. So they will join the rest of the salah. Obviously, if they're praying in jama'ah, they will join the rest of the salah and make up what they missed. They don't have to start again. Okay, clear? To go back to how the book is split. We split the book into two main parts. You can call it the part to do with Aqeedah, what the Muslim has to believe in terms of the Shahadatain, and then the part to do with Fiqh. The main part of the book, the Fiqh part, we split into three parts. The first being the conditions, which we've just completed. The second part was the pillars of Salah. The pillars of Salah, the actions and the speech and the belief in Salah, that these things, without them, the Salah is incorrect within the Salah. The difference between a condition and a pillar is that a condition happens, or you need to come with before the Salah itself. So somebody needs to make sure that they're facing the Qibla, they cover their awrah and so on, before the Salah. But a pillar is stuff that happens within the Salah itself. Without them, the Salah is incorrect. For example, the ruku' and the sujood, like we're going to study. And we'll start the explanation of the pillars now and complete, inshaAllah, as much as we can before Maghrib, and then we'll continue next week. So, he says, Rahimahullah Ta'ala, وَأَمَّا أَرْكَانُ الصَّلَاةِ فَتِسْعَةَ عَشَرَ. As for the pillars of Salah, which is the second part of the book, there are 19 pillars of Salah. When we study other books, you might see differing numbers. You might see sometimes 17, 19, 18, other numbers. So that doesn't mean that the pillars themselves differ. What that means is the way that they are counted differs, that's it. So you might see one book, might say the first sajda is a pillar in itself, and the second sajda is another pillar in itself in every rak'ah. And another book might say that to make sujood twice is a pillar. That causes difference in numbers. But it doesn't mean that the pillars themselves differ. And he says, Al-awwalu. Now we're going into the first pillar. He says, Al-awwalu النية بالقلب فيحضر في قلبه فعل الصلاة ويعبر عنه بأصلي ويحضر فيه فرضيتها ويعبر عنه بفرض ويحضر فيه تعيينها ويعبر عنه بالظهر أو العصر أو المغرب أو العشاء أو الصبح. فإذا حضرت هذه الثلاثة في قلبه قال الله أكبر غير غافل عنها ويزيد استحضار مأموما إن كان جماعة. So, like before, we will split any pillars that have a lot of detail into sections. Like we split the first condition into 4 parts, we will split this pillar into we don't need to split this pillar actually. We don't need to split this pillar actually. There's only one part, which is what is required. So the first of all, he says al-awwalu an-niyatu bil-qalb. The title of this pillar is to have intention in the heart. The first pillar of Salah is to have intention where? In the heart. To have intention in the heart. And like we studied before, the definition of niyyah is قصد شيء مقترنا بفعله. قصد شيء مقترنا بفعله. To intend something with the action itself. For example, the niyyah for wudu would be to intend the wudu whilst putting water on your face, whilst washing your face. And to summarize what the Shaykh mentioned, and we'll go into the translation in a minute, we can say that for the niyyah, you need, when the salah is fard, when it's one of the 5 daily prayers, you need 3 things. You need 3 things. The first one is to intend the action. The first thing you need is to intend the action. To intend that you're going to pray. If someone was to intend, for example, to fast, you will intend the action of fasting, or to give zakah, or to do hajj, or to do umrah, or to do anything. You intend the action. You intend the action. The second thing you need is ta'yin, which is to specify what type of salah is it. Is it dhuhr? Is it asr? Is it maghrib? Is it tarawih? Is it tahajjud? Is it istikhara? Is it? You specify. والثالث نية الفرضية is to have the intention that what you're praying is fard, what you're praying is obligatory. So those are the 3 things that are needed. And the Shaykh, he mentions that when he says النية فيحضر في قلبه فعل الصلاة. So he brings within his heart فعل الصلاة, the action of the salah. And ويعبر عنه, and this can be shown in by saying أصلي, I'm praying. This can be shown by saying in your heart, I'm praying. ويحضر فيه فرضيتها, and he also brings within his heart that the fact that it's fard. And he says ويعبر عنه بفرض, and you show that the speech that you say, for example, in your heart is fard. You say that this is obligatory. So I'm praying. ويحضر فيه تعيينها, and you also bring within your heart that you are specifying what salah is. And this is what he says, and he says ويعبر عنه, and it's shown through بالظهر أو العصر أو المغرب أو العشاء أو الصبح, that you are saying that I'm praying either ظهر or عصر or maghrib or isha or subh, the morning prayer, which is fajr. And then he says فإذا حضرت هذه الثلاثة في قلبه, هذه الثلاثة في قلبه. If someone brings all these 3 things within their heart, and then قال الله أكبر, then he says الله أكبر غير غافل عنها, without being heedless of it, يزيد استحضار, and he increases استحضار مأموما إن كان جماعة, and he increases when it's in a jama'ah that he's a follower, obviously if he's a follower, and if he's a imam, he increases by saying imam, that he's an imam. But if he is praying by himself, he doesn't say any of the 2. He doesn't bring that intention in his heart, because he's not a follower and he's not a leader as well. So, and that is the niyyah. That is the niyyah. The 3 things that you need for your niyyah is to specify the action, to specify what you're praying, and to know that it's fard, to know that it's obligatory. Those are 3 things that he mentioned in this pillar. Is that clear? Very simple. والثاني, the second pillar from the pillars of salah is تكبيرة الإحرام. تكبيرة الإحرام وهي الله أكبر. تكبيرة الإحرام meaning الله أكبر. To say the first takbir, Allahu Akbar. And the pillar is to say Allahu Akbar. The pillar is not to raise your hands or to put your hands on your chest. That is not the pillar. The pillar is the saying of Allahu Akbar. So if someone was to start their salah by saying Allahu Akbar and without raising their hands or without putting their hands together, then this is a salah that is correct and has started, because the pillar they came with is saying Allahu Akbar. Now some important things to mention. This is, first one is a side benefit. Why is it called Takbiratul Ihram? Anyone know? Good. Takbiratul Ihram coming from obviously haram is because things that were previously halal for you are now haram, like eating and drinking whilst you're praying the salah. So, that's a side benefit. And some of the hikmah is that it can bring someone to know what they're about to do. That Allahu Akbar, Allah is the greatest. Like, I'm about to pray in front of my Lord. Get themselves ready to increase khushu' in their salah. And no doubt, khushu' is one of the most important things. That someone is ready for the salah. that they're in the right state of mind for the salah. Why? Because this is the connection somebody has with their Lord, where they every day are able to ask Allah for what they want through the salah. And also the level of your khushu' is how much you're rewarded for your salah. Two people can be praying next to each other, one gaining much more reward than the other. Why? Because of the level of khushu'. Sah? And the Allahu Akbar is saying, is a way for you to bring your heart ready for the salah. Almost saying that Allah is greater than anything else that I could be thinking about at this moment. Sah? And what is khushu'? What is khushu' is that sukunul jawarih, that your limbs are in their position and staying still. Wa hudurul qalb, and the presence of the heart. That your heart is present within the salah. And that is what we aim to achieve in each of our salah. And some rulings related to the takbir that we should know. That the person needs to say the takbir whilst they are standing. Whilst they are standing. This is very, very important. For obviously the one that is able to stand. Why? Because a lot of people, when they are rushing to a salah, you might have seen this a lot. They're rushing to a salah and they run to the salah and say Allahu Akbar whilst they're bowing to catch the rak'ah. When the imam is in ruku', to catch it, they say Allahu Akbar whilst they're on the way down. This isn't correct. And that takbir doesn't count. It's as if they haven't started salah. What is needed from them is to catch, to do the first takbir, Allahu Akbar, as their takbiratul ihram, and then another takbir to go into ruku'. Why? Because the takbiratul ihram needs to happen whilst you're standing up. This is a very common mistake and is a cause for someone's salah to not even count. Okay, so that's one, that they need to do whilst they're standing if they're able. The second one is, and this is the case for all of the pillars that are spoken, that the person should be able to hear themselves if there was no noise around them. What does that mean? That the person says Allahu Akbar so that they can hear themselves. For example, in a room now, we would say Allahu Akbar and we'll be able to hear ourselves. But if we were outside and there's cars and everything, if we said that in the same voice, we wouldn't be able to hear ourselves. But that's fine, because if it was to be quiet and we're in a quiet place, we would have been able to hear ourselves. Does that make sense? So enough that if it was quiet, you would have been able to hear yourself. Same thing for someone that is deaf. They don't, obviously, because they can't hear, they just say to as much as if they weren't deaf, they would be able to hear themselves. If a normal person was, not saying that, they would be able to hear themselves. Does that make sense? Okay? That makes sense. And we'll stop on the next point, which is, and that can take us to the end of all of the arkan while somebody is standing at the beginning of the salah. The next two are very simple. Then he says, الثالث, the third from the pillars of salah, قراءة الفاتحة في القيام. To read the Fatiha whilst somebody is standing, whilst the person is standing, to read the Fatiha. And as you know, the Fatiha is 7 ayat, starting with the Basmala, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, being the first of the 7. And some of the things that are also wajib within this pillar is that the person needs to read the Fatiha in order, and that they need to be one after the other. The ayat need to be one after the other, and there shouldn't be anything outside of the salah that comes in between them, in between the ayat. For example, somebody says Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and somebody sees it and they say Yarhamkallah. Sah? And also, what cuts off this quick succession if there's long breaks? So for example, someone says Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and waits for no reason, then the Fatiha is incomplete. So this is breaking the quick succession of the Fatiha that is required. And it's also wajib for somebody, as much as they're able to and as long as they're continuously practicing, to take care of its huruf, its letters, and its tashdidat, or the shadda in Fatiha. And just like in the takbir, that the person needs to be able to hear themselves if they were in somewhere that was quiet. Does that make sense? And we'll stop on this last point, which is الرابع, the fourth of the 19 pillars of Salah. القيام إن قدر ولو بحبل أو معين في صلاة الفرض. That the person should, the fourth pillar is that the person should pray standing. إن قدر ولو بحبل, if they are able to stand, ولو بحبل, even if it's through holding a rope to keep them up, even if it's through holding a rope to keep them up, أو معين, or someone to help them stay up in Salah, or something to help them, like leaning on a wall to stay up, standing. When is this? في صلاة الفرض, in the obligatory prayers, the 5 daily prayers. As for the voluntary prayers, then this is not a pillar. Someone can pray sitting down with less reward. With less reward. And if they are not able to stand up, then they sit however they are able to. Whether that's on the floor or on a chair, they sit however they are able to. Wallahu alam. Any questions? No. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Sorry.